on Nvidia. It's been the MVP as it relates to the AI trade. How long can it hold that crown?
I mean, it should, and I think you will. When you look at all the hyperscalers spent, or at least what they announced this year, from Google's 90 billion to Meta's 85 billion to everyone else, really, all that money is really going towards the GPUs and the Nvidia solutions. So I think it's going to hold on. I think what we're looking for tomorrow is really some nuance around the China business. Is that going to continue? And then also the ramp for their Blackwell chips, for their newer chips. So I'm hopeful that this AI party will continue.
Okay, Ron, what is your thought and what's your expectation going into Nvidia's results? It often sells off recently off the back of its results, even if they beat and raise.
I fully agree with the observation. A great deal is going to hinge on Nvidia's ability to show progress with the Blackwell capabilities. Also, I think another area that is important, and it came out during the Hot Chips conference, is that their addressable market is expanding yet more by, say, $1 trillion, and that is the physical AI market segment. And as a result, that's going to fuel their ability to meet, for example, the $450 billion spend on AI data centers by the end of this year alone. And by 2030, I'm anticipating that we're seeing a $5 trillion market. So the near term, this is going to benefit Nvidia, but also further out, it's going to add, I would say, more momentum to their stock, in addition to taking advantage of the tailwinds at the macroeconomic level. That is the Federal Reserve indicating dialing back of interest rates and so forth. So this is all coming together to benefit Nvidia this week and further out.
When you think about the AI growth story, right? Nvidia's been a winner, Meta's been a winner. Where do you see the ladder within the Mag 7? This year, it's been a bifurcation, Hatem.
Well, I mean, it's obvious Apple is the loser, right? Siri is still a mess, right? But I would never count Apple out. And I think what we're going to see is first of all, we're seeing them already spending money in R&D to build private cloud, basically, whereby you can run AI models on your iPhone. And I think if that goes into Siri and Siri becomes very useful, I think that would be very, very huge for Apple.
Okay. Ron, I want to ask you that question in this way. Well, who do you think is the best position for the long run, let's say over the next 5 years within the Mag 7? Top two.
Sure. Yeah, I would go with NVIDIA and Microsoft. I touched on why NVIDIA. They're certainly well positioned to take advantage of physical AI investments. And I would add Microsoft for the reasons that they are pretty much maintaining their innovative edge, I would say, in terms of their Azure cloud business, as well as showing ecosystem influence with their Copilot offerings, as well as their ability to quite simply maintain growth with the Azure cloud business. And that, I think, will be their ability to be best investment over the next 5 years. Next, I would include Amazon, because they're also well positioned to take advantage of the physical AI momentum, as they are using automated warehousing as a key component of how to maintain their profit margins as well as their overall competitiveness.
I like that you added a third pick there. I was thinking I want a third pick. I like that you added one. Meta would like a word, though. But Hatem, what do you think? List for me your top three, and then I'm curious to know what you think about Apple over the next 5 years if it's not in your top three.
Well, again, I think NVIDIA definitely is at the top.
6% for NVIDIA in either direction on its after the bell report this coming Wednesday. That's the lowest expected move predicted since 2023 for an earnings day. So how should you position ahead of that big report? Joining me now is Chris Murphy, co-head of derivative strategy at Susquehanna. Chris, all of this earnings season, we've seen some of the implied moves happening on the heels of earnings coming in less than what they have been over, say, the last 8 to 12 quarters. Nvidia is no different. Are you expecting that same kind of muted approach to those earnings with the stock reaction afterwards?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I think the options market, especially in something like Nvidia that's so actively traded, does a really good job handicapping these moves. If you rewind to this time last year, the options market was pricing in about twice as big of a move, and we certainly have seen some surprises since AI really became a thing back in 2023, and we had some of these blowout moves. But it's so under the microscope. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's focusing on it. It's almost like the line at the Super Bowl. Everybody has an opinion. Everyone's doing a lot of research, and it really does find a pretty fair price, fair value for what the expected move is.
Chris, in many cases in the markets, that volatility often comes with gaps in information, right? The people who know things, the people who are trying to play catch up. Does it say to you that given some of these implied moves that we are seeing being less than what they have been historically, that the market, that investors have become a little bit more in tune with just what the expectations are? In other words, that information gap between players and participants has narrowed.
100%. I totally agree. I mean, I think that even just thinking about a retail trader having access to ChatGPT or whatever else, they have all the information, or almost all the information that the most sophisticated hedge fund investor would as well. I do think there's a bit of a leveling out of information. Maybe companies are doing a better job with their messaging. Investors just have a better handle on what their expectations should be. But I think a big part of it is the leveling out of information flow.
Nvidia is not the only AI name that is part of this kind of leveling out. We are also seeing some moderation and moves around some of the other big names in technology around AI. Do you feel as though that's a sign that there is a maybe maturing aspect, not a fully matured aspect, but this idea that people are now a little bit more aware of what's going on with the artificial intelligence trade?
Yeah, it's not surprising everybody like it did a couple of years ago when Nvidia reported earnings and traded up 24%. So, that's a part of it. I do think that over the last couple of years, selling volatility has been an attractive trade. So anytime anyone has a chance to to sell what they think is elevated volatility, they're going to come in. A lot of people are going to try to sell those dislocations. So that can dampen moves as well. When that side of the trade is so much bigger than the side of the trade that's looking to buy volatility in the option.
Bring us the context of last week. Prior, of course, to Jackson Hole and euphoria on Friday, we were worried about overall frothy valuations in the area of AI. Is Nvidia going to be a key test on that?
I think it is. I mean, I think that really is keeping the market right now with respect to the AI trade on pause, waiting for more news from Nvidia to see what earnings bears, and really to see if they've been able to continue to grow into what are really lofty growth numbers. You've certainly seen AI come under pressure as the market's been rallying to new highs, but broadening out outside of AI. And so Nvidia, I think, is front and center for this, at least for the market this week with respect to the AI trade.
Have you questioned anything fundamentally, though, that changed in the last week when we suddenly were awash with concerns about MIT writings or whether Sam Altman saw a bubble or not?
Yeah, I think the MIT research note really laid bare the fact that right now, implementation and adoption is really critical in terms of enterprise integration, being able to appropriately adopt these models into the enterprise environment. And so I think the MIT paper was a little bit misunderstood in that, yes, they're saying that only 5% are productive, but where they see the real hindrance is not with the models themselves, but rather with enterprises being able to implement effectively those models into their software environments. And so what I think is really key for the next leg for AI adoption and growth is going to be the software companies and the implementers that are able to take these effective ChatGPT or other models and enterprise and integrate them into the business environment. And so software companies that can do that effectively are really going to be the winners, I think, in the next leg of this AI trade.
Look, we got worried about Intuit or Workday earnings at the end of last week. We've been worried about some of the European players. SAP has been under pressure, and others as we worried about software sort of being eaten by AI. But then on the flip side, a Palantir, ultimately a software company, has been the best performing company of the year, even with some of the recent sell-off. Do you generally think that software is getting beaten up too much, or do you think companies are able to embrace and pivot with AI?
I think right now we're really seeing the winners and the losers and the bifurcation of the winners and losers in the software environment. You know, companies that are like Palantir that have been really effectively able to deploy AI, use it, and then deliver it effectively to their customers are the winners right now in this environment, and I think are going to persist to be the winners. I think the companies that are being left behind and the laggards right now are the companies where Palantir is sort of eating their lunch and taking business from them. And so, there's going to be winners and losers in any environment when you see these disruptions occur. But right now, we're really seeing sort of the fight of it. But I think broadly speaking, as an industry group, software should be the ones that are implementing AI into enterprise environments and being able to grow into what I think is a greater demand environment going forward. We've moved on from just the picks and shovels of AI and now really looking to the deployment stage and the monetization stage, and that's where software should really shine.
Nvidia is the picks and shovels. It's the key test this week in terms of earnings. What are you hearing in terms of, the depreciation of the assets that ultimately Nvidia is selling to all of these hyperscalers? It's where the demand goes, but how long are they sticking around? Have you managed to sort of model that out?
No, I mean, not explicitly in terms of modeling it out, but I think right now we're still in very early stages of this, and so I think there still is quite a long runway for NVIDIA chips. But you are seeing that, we're seeing, good scale adoption, but we're also seeing a lot of innovation, and that should really just keep demand, pretty robust for the picks and shovels as we continue to innovate, those, the entry trips into the AI space.
As we look ahead to NVIDIA earnings tomorrow night, uncertainty around China still looming after reports that it halted production of its made-for-China chip. Our Christina Partsenevelos has more on what to expect, and obviously one of the most important prints of the quarter, KP.
Yeah, and so for NVIDIA, this China story is really less about what just happened, what you just talked about, and more about what comes next. The company's latest quarter will almost certainly show zero revenue from China after the H20 export ban, which is a stark contrast to the estimated $16 billion backlog that Oppenheimer says existed when the ban actually hit in April. The stock, though, is trading near all-time highs. Look at that, trading at 181. The all-time high was around 184. But it faces a critical test. Can management provide any visibility on China's return? U.S. officials began granting limited licenses in August, but with the quarter ending on July 31st, a lot of Wall Street analysts just don't expect any immediate revenue recognition for China. Chinese authorities are also simultaneously pressuring domestic firms to buy local alternatives like Huawei chips, just as NVIDIA is really trying to restart supply. And then there's recent reports suggesting NVIDIA is already slowing H20 production due to this pushback, though the company only said it, quote, constantly manages supply chains to address market conditions. So somewhat of a vague answer that didn't really deny it. The wild card, though, is NVIDIA's new B30 chip designed for China, with speculation that President Trump's administration could approve exports in the near term. That could mean today's muted H20 revenues, specifically for China, get replaced by much larger B30 sales down the line. With CEO Jensen Huang calling China a $50 billion market opportunity, even capturing low single-digit share would be material to the stock. But until management really offers any concrete guidance specifically around China, this overhang will likely cap the stock's momentum. Options market is pricing a 6% swing, guys.
Interesting, KP. We were talking with Kramer this morning. The average price target on NVIDIA is up like 8% in a month. It's a little bit strange to see the street get bulled up in advance of the print.
Yes, and most of that, I was just checking that, and so most of the upside and change to estimates actually came for their guidance. And it seems like the high end of the street is anticipating $55 billion. That is substantial for a guide. And the reason they're saying it, not to do with China, but the ramp up of Blackwell. You have the Blackwell Ultra production. There seems to be still, not enough supply to keep up with demand coming from other manufacturers like Supermicro, Core, you've even talking about it. So they're reading the leaves, I guess, from all the other companies still complaining about trying to get a hold of these chips, and that's translating to higher expectations for guide for Nvidia.
Nvidia tomorrow, that's big news. But the market, which hit record highs on Friday, we saw record close for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. This week, there's been some pressure. And we also have, by the way, folks, the MSCI rebalance here. So there'll be some heavy volume at the close here. The traders are prepared for that. And good morning to you, Kevin Green.
Good morning, Nicole. Yeah, a lot on the calendar for the remainder of the week, and we are kind of gyrating here a little bit if you're kind of looking at the price action from yesterday and even this morning. You're seeing around 30% of the stocks in the S&P 500 to the upside. And it's kind of mixed when you're looking at the risk-on, risk-off sentiment here. You do have healthcare kind of outperforming to the upside here, but you are also seeing some risk-on sectors catching a little bit of a bid, especially when you're looking at the semiconductor space as a whole, which is going to be a key driver for us in today's session. Now, if we're kind of looking at the levels, I would say I'm not saying that we're in no man's land, but we're at a critical area here where we are starting to make lower highs as well as lower lows since that Friday move to the upside, which was obviously fairly aggressive. So I do have a line here at 64.30, which is going to be a key area of support to the upside, is your area of resistance, 64.50 for today. And then to the downside, we actually have two levels to really focus on. If we do get any type of further flush, maybe some news headlines hits the wire here today, 6,400 is going to be your first critical area to be able to hold. Hopefully some buyers step in. If not, 63.70 is going to be on the radar. We actually have seen some put flows over from yesterday as well as today or this morning that have shown up at that particular level here. So hopefully we are able to kind of get some buyers to really step in, stop this kind of trend of having lower highs and lower lows since this move that we had on Friday here. And we might have another kind of range bound day. Yesterday was for the most part kind of range bound until we got towards the end of the session where we closed for the most part on the lows here, which is not really a good sign. But obviously, once again, we have a lot that's going to be on the calendar today as well. What could be a factor for us is going to be consumer confidence, which we'll have that number out in about 28 minutes or so. Keep your eye out on the expectations of the consumer moving forward, as well as the current conditions or the present conditions. There has been a little bit of a divergence there, and if we actually do get a better than expected consumer confidence print, that could also give us maybe some fuel that the market could try to rally off of those numbers.
Yeah, understood. So we'll watch for the confidence print shortly. I was talking about the steepening of the yield curve, and we see the 10-year right now at 428, but there's been so much talk this morning about the shorter end, looking at the 2-year, that we're seeing the shorter end coming down while the long end is rising. Some of your thoughts on what's going on here?
Yeah, you're continuing to see that spread widening out, and that's not an anomaly. That usually does happen, especially when you're starting a rate cutting cycle. I think the big question is how aggressive the Fed is going to be over the next couple of months. But if you're looking at the 10-year yield futures here, this is going to be a 3-year weekly chart to give it a little bit of a better perspective. We're making lower highs and we're also making higher lows, and we're going to be close to this apex. It'll happen around the middle of November, or actually early December or so. But even though we have seen bond volatility for the most part, especially on the longer end of the curve, kind of inch up here a little bit over the long term, if you're looking at the pricing aspect or the rate aspect of it, we're still in a consolidated range for now and expecting either a breakout to the upside or downside. Now RSI is still making a lower highs at this point in time, so that's something to be mindful of also in one of this this triangle formation or this wedge formation here. And MACD is actually signaling that yields could go lower here. So yes, the spread is going to be very key, and no matter what spread that you look at, 2s, 10s, you can look at 3-month, 10-year, you can look at all of these different ones, but we are expecting shorter duration versus longer duration to continue to spread or widen out here, which once again is normal, but that also could create some headaches here for the administration that is trying to get the longer end of the curve to move down just a tad bit here in order to kind of spark mortgage demand and things of that nature and refinancing. So a very interesting chart, but at the end of the day, the volatility is still within range of what we've seen over the last couple of weeks as well as the last couple of months or so.